Let's go back to the beginning. Where does this story of you and the former president begin?
I started in 1965 on an internship program called the White House Fellows.
And what do you remember about those times?
I remember that it was just an extraordinary time. I mean, it was a time of what I think of great triumph, the work that was being done in civil rights, particularly the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, but also it was a time of great tragedy as we began to experience enormous losses of both American lives and Vietnamese lives in Vietnam.
What surprised you about meeting the president for the first time?
His size. He's a large man,
Yeah.
and he dominated the room, and he would be sort of a forceful person in terms of making his points.
Yeah.
He often would come up to you, and he's up like this, sort of looking down, and he would put his finger up on you like this to make his points.
Yeah.
He was a very persuasive person, very dominating in so many ways.
Do you think he knew that his size was a bit of a way to get his point across?
Absolutely.
So, as I understand, over the years, you became, one of his closest aides, and as the president, you think of things that went on in Vietnam. What's it like to be in the room when those kind of decisions are made?
I think only now do I recognize the importance of being in the room at the time. I mean, I was a young graduate of Harvard Business School out of Macon, Georgia, with no prior political experience. But here I was taking the notes of the most secret meetings that President Johnson was having. And yet at the time, I didn't really have this sense of importance at all about my work. It's only now as I look back at all of this and the way in which President Johnson really pulled me and my wife and family very close to them, both during the presidency and then the years following the presidency.
The U.S. involvement in Vietnam started before he became president and
Yes.
continued after, but he played a very pivotal role. How much did he labor over that decision to send troops into Southeast Asia?
He anguished all of the time.
Yeah.
It was as though he was trapped between what he could do diplomatically and what he needed to do militarily. He was convinced that unless America halted the advance of the North Vietnamese and communism in North Vietnam, that it could very much spread into the rest of Southeast Asia, into Thailand, and all the way into Singapore. He believed in the so-called domino theory, that if South Vietnam fell to the communists, that could spread. And I should tell you that the then head of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, believed it too, that America needed to stand firm, but it was a period of incredible anguish every day, every day.
As the years went on, the war became unpopular in the country. Did you see him start to waver in his decisions then?
I saw the impact of the opposition to the war on him. As we would pull out of the driveway of the White House, even though we were in these armored limousines, we could hear the sounds of the peace protesters shouting, "Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today?" I'll never forget his reaching over to me and saying, and these were his exact words, "I wish they knew that I want peace as much as they do too." Exact quote.
Did you ever look at him and think, thank goodness I don't have your job?
I often looked at him and thought, what can I do to lighten his load?
Yeah.
I was not a policy advisor. I mean, he had Secretary McNamara at Defense and Secretary Rusk at State and Dick Helms at CIA and others, but I looked at a man who was under a massive load. I also felt that he was trying to find a way to secure an honorable peace.
What do you think he would say about the election we have going on today?
President Johnson would not know quite what to think about the election going on today. because I don't think in his lifetime, and certainly not in my lifetime, have we experienced anything like this. He loved politics. He had great bipartisan spirit, and I think that would be what dismayed him the most, because he could work together then with Republican leaders Everett Dirksen to a secure passage of important work. I think the partisanship we have today, this bitter partisanship, is something that would really disturb him. I'm almost glad he didn't live to see this.
I've heard he could blister the walls pretty well behind closed doors when he was upset about something.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that?
LBJ could blister the walls behind closed doors, and I experienced it a few times. Yeah. On one occasion, I took him to the wrong location in New York. Between the Secret Service and Tom Johnson, I helped to deliver President Johnson to the wrong event in New York. And I'll never forget when we came out of that event, where he handled it exceptionally well. He sort of reached over, got me by the lapel, and he said, "Tom, how did that happen?"
So he did the whole thing, shook the hands?
Well, not only did he shake the hands, it was a party given by Jacqueline Kennedy when I was supposed to be taking him to the home of Arthur Krim, with a K, Arthur Krim and his wife Matilda. Wow. But the Secret Service agent said, "Mr. President, it wasn't Tom's fault alone, it was ours too." But I made a few mistakes that I remember. But the interesting part about it, while I don't think he would ever apologize, later, if he was really tough on us, he would do something nice for us. Yeah. For example, coming to my house to present me with a gold Rolex watch for my birthday.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, he had this way of coming back with generosity and kindness at times when he had just chewed you out earlier. So,
everything going on here then, what are your thoughts on all the events going on? What are you most excited to see? Or maybe excited is the wrong word, but looking forward to seeing?
I so hope that out of these 3 days that we can learn some of the most important lessons of the Vietnam experience for what we are doing today in our foreign policy. What we're doing today as it relates to Iran, to Iraq, to Afghanistan, to the crisis now with North Korea having nuclear weapons and perhaps even a launch vehicle. I so hope that we can do that. And with people like current Secretary of State, John Kerry, and former Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, I think it's a real chance to talk about the lessons learned, where war may be necessary at times, but diplomacy is needed at all times.
Last question. People often criticize the president, whoever it may be. What should we know from somebody who has sat there and seen the decisions be made, what goes on in that office?
President Johnson wanted to make this nation and this world a better place. He so wanted people to have an opportunity for civil rights. He wanted people to have an opportunity for a job. He wanted people to have an opportunity for a home. He had this feeling, which maybe was somehow infused in him when he was a teacher in Cotulla, Texas, that especially young people need to have education, that education was the key to success in life. Of course, that was all a part of the Great Society that included Medicare. But Vietnam overshadowed it, and in so many ways diminished the incredible excellence that he had achieved for America on the domestic fronts. This is a man who tried to make America a better country. He tried.
Tom Johnson, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for your insights. That was really interesting.
Good question.